Assuming that I am not so prolific with my videos for a while, then I want to leave you with an alternative for those of you who do appreciate my videos. You do like the subject matter and delivery that I broach and display. For those of you that seem to be looking for the root and essence of what you are, then I suppose that sort of thing has or is what has brought most of you to this channel. And still it astounds me that out of all of my subscribers at this moment in time, 1,350, something like that, there are still many that aren't aware that I have actually written a book. And even though I put the title in the description of almost every single video, there are people that say they didn't know I wrote a book. And so again, you know, I am perplexed every single day of my life. And you know, on many occasions I will say something very explicit in the video, and then I'll get a question which is pertaining to that which I said, which obviously the listener, viewer had missed. And so again, I'm perplexed. But then when, you know, I resign myself to the complexity and the variance of human consciousness, and how many of you are always doing other things when you're listening to my videos because you're very busy and you know your life necessitates that. I'm very often doing two things at the same time myself. But if you're listening to such subject matter as the esoteric, then those sorts of subjects need a higher level of concentration, and so reading fits that bill. Now, I'm always reading, and I'm always emphatic about how important it is to read, because floating around the internet you are only ever going to get superficial information, unless you are listening to the full-length audio of a book, or you're listening to scholars or people which collate a lot of stuff together. You know, they're very good at what they do, and they will give you a certain something, but there's nothing better than reading the books, people, and getting the information from source, or as close to source as we can, i.e. the original authors of this information. So what I did when I fell down the rabbit hole, which I'm going to be speaking about in a minute, I decided that I needed to go back to source with every subject matter that I was ever going to broach. I didn't want to waste time with 1,000-fold repetitive hearsays of people picking out a bit of this and a bit of that and getting things wrong and all that sort of thing, and not giving any depth, because they realise that people are not really looking for depth, they're just looking for tweets. But if you really are on the spiritual path and you really do want to know the answers, then you really do need to invest in reading, and a lot of reading, forever, for the rest of your life, because it will never end. You will never get to the point whereby you consider that you know everything. More likely you get to a point whereby you consider, like me, there's nothing really to know definitively, because there's so many variances and opinions of all this stuff and experiences, and even if someone explains categorically a certain something, then it's down to our perception, how we feel about that, what we think about it, whether we have an adherence to it or we don't believe it, or all these different sorts of things. So it really is very, very complicated. So at this moment in time, I am reading many books. Due to the enormity of the books, I like to mix things up and not get too stagnant or too embroiled, or to lose enthusiasm for a certain subject. Now, At this moment in time, I have begun again to read Dostoevsky, and so I've got these two books here, very appropriately named here, The Idiot, which is many intellectual people's idea of the vast majority of the human race, contrary to some of you who just don't like to think about that, you don't like to hear it, you want to shy away from it. I don't know, maybe it's because you are one. That stands to reason, doesn't it? But anybody who isn't an idiot will have made the observation themselves, and it's kind of like, well, it's as plain as day, so why can't we say it? Why can't we vocalise it? Why is everybody treating it like it's the elephant in the room? And you've got all these idiots around you and nobody dares say anything about them. We've got to treat them all with the greatest of respect, and just imagine that they are equal to people like Dostoevsky. It's shocking, isn't it? Now, I bought this book, you know, and this book, of course, is some magnitude. It's Dostoevsky's most expansive work, and he wrote it 1 year before he died. And I think he compiled all of the odds and sods of stuff that he'd written into this book, because he knew it was going to be his last. Now, I bought this book because I heard Jordan Peterson and Stephen Fry speaking about the argument for God in here with the brothers Karamazov, and so, well, I thought I needed to listen to that, I needed to be privy to it, and so I bought the book, and then I've read probably a third of the book, skipping through to let's say headings that attract my attention, but like scholars of these particular books say, never go by the title because you will get very little from it. And I always say that in relation to my videos. Never judge my videos by the title, people, because I just put up anything random. And if I'm speaking for an hour, there's a whole bunch of stuff in my videos, and if I was going to title them efficiently, I would need to put 50 titles in and subnotes to all these titles. But I leave my videos to you, the viewer, to discern. Once you've seen a few of my videos, you'll get the idea that the title doesn't match the content, and so you'll give the videos the benefit of the doubt if you have the time and wisdom. So, Brothers Karamazov, speaking about life in general, you know, deeply analysing what it is to be a human being and to interact socially, and you know, deal with our conscience and our aspirations, and you know, guilt and love and all these different sort of things. So I've not got too far into The Idiot. But, you know, this is the sort of book I'll take when I go to the churchyard, and I'll read it whilst I'm walking around and getting an all-over spit roast type tan. This one I read before I go to bed. And between these, I'm revisiting again Madame Blavatsky. I bought these books 5 years ago. This Isis Unveiled is her first book, and then she's got two volumes the same thickness as this, called The Secret Doctrine, and they're all about the metaphysical, the spiritual, supernatural, and cosmic consciousness and spirits and all different sorts of stuff like that. For those of us that are at a certain depth of the spiritual awakening, then we have to know stuff like this, people, because in these books here, like this one, she's collated anything that was really meaningful and powerful from around the world, from all different sorts of cultures and countries and continents, and put it into here of what people thought about religion and spirituality and, you know, all those different varieties of phenomena. Then I have recently got through mostly both of these books, but the theme being very much the same, I kind of needed a break from them, and so, albeit this author is a very, very powerful author, and one that has been considerably frowned upon for the way he saw the world for many years, because it isn't conducive with how the world is making machinations and a certain drive of everybody is one, we're all equal. This guy will tell you that there's nothing equal about the human being at all, and of course that is true. As far as truth goes, there is nothing equal about the human being. We're all equal, but some more equal than others, and so very powerful books. But these books are not for liberalists, they're not for love and lighters, they're not for anyone that doesn't want to consider that there is a difference between the human being, because these books will tell you categorically there are massive differences, and Shrinking Violets, Love and Lighters don't want to hear that. Weak people don't want to hear that, because they realise they've always been dominated by people like that, and psychology and philosophy like that. Now, also I'm reading Jordan Peterson's Maps of Meaning. Now, this book apparently took him 15 years to write, and he reckons that he rewrote every single line at least 50 times, and so you can imagine with a mind like Jordan Peterson's that there would be some truth in that, you know, every single line 50 times. Well, I mean, but to be very, very self-critical and consider, could I write that better? Could I say it better? Could I be more simple in my delivery? Because of course the subject matter he's dealing with here, Maps of Meaning, it's about how the brain works on a neuroscientific level, and then it goes on to the psychology and philosophy, because he's a clinical psychologist, and so there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, and he goes into religion and spirituality and the root of all evil and all different sorts of things. But what I will say about this book is it's contrary to what you would think, that Peterson would find a quality publisher. Well, when I'm lying in bed and I want to open this book so I can see, you know, closer into the spine of the book, then as I was pulling it open, then it split. And so I was very disappointed with that, because that is indicative of a cheaply put together book. As opposed, ladies and gentlemen, to my book, which is this book, which when you buy it or have bought it will look like this, because this one here with a line going across it is the one that isn't for sale. That's the one that I bought so I could proofread it before I went ahead with the published version. But that is the fully published version. And when we open this book, we can bend it any which way. And that is a nice facility to have with a book of this magnitude, because if you are lying in bed and you're like this, then you want it to be easy, and so you don't want to be holding it like that. It becomes a ball ache, doesn't it? And so we hold it like this, and we can do this with this spine. It's a very, very soft bound book. It's a quality book. The paper's quality. The only thing that I have an issue with is that the clarity of it isn't that great, because when I sent through the designer wasn't aware of the particular settings that Amazon required for clarity, and so, you know, it is what it is. But having read many, many other books, that superficiality is nothing. It pales into insignificance if you have text that doesn't actually make sense when you read the book and there's too many errors. And I have to be quite frank, in Peterson's book, for what he would have paid as a publishing agent, you would have thought that the proofreaders would you know, have got everything pretty spot on, but there's so many things I've come upon already that that's not worded correctly. correctly, or it doesn't even make grammatical sense. And so, you know, with Peterson, with his reading and rewriting 50 times every line, well, he missed many things, and the publishers missed them also. But what I will say about this book is that when I have read it through very, very carefully, I've come upon literally no more than between 5 and 10 grammatical errors in the whole book. And so I was very pleased with that, because I too was very meticulous about you know, how I wanted it to be delivered. The clarity is absolutely imperative, the clarity. I wasn't being ambiguous in any shape or form. I wrote it in as prose language as I possibly could, so more people can grasp it, even though the subject matter is very complex. And so what I'm going to do, people, is that I'm going to be touching on some of the highlights of the sub-chapters. Now there are 300 sub-chapters, and the book, of course, it's pretty expansive. It is it's even more expansive than any of those I've just shown you. So really, there's a lot of information in here. And so for those of you that have the constitution for reading, then I would highly recommend this book, seeing as you like the sort of material that I deliver in my videos, because you're going to get a vastly more in-depth display, illustration, conveyance, whatever you want to call it, and you get the lineage. You get the lineage from when I started, when I began with my spiritual awakening and all the circumstances that gave rise to that, to where I am currently, which is about a year ago. So it's pretty well the same. You know, there's not been too many additional enlightening experiences. So let us just begin then, shall we? And I'm only touching on the highlighted ones, and so there are many that I am not running through, because I realise that you don't have that much time, you don't have that much patience, and so I'll just touch the ones which I think are particularly poignant. So it starts off in the preface: an unfortunate childhood led towards an auspicious adulthood. Now, because of my traumatic childhood, then that was the foundation for me ultimately launching into my spiritual awakening. But it was a case of it was always going to happen, but as an adult I needed more of a catalyst, and I got the catalyst after I was shot in my bed in Africa in the early hours of one particular morning, and could have very easily lost my life, but from that point forward my whole mindset changed, and I needed to discover what life was all about. Just let me get my reading glasses. So I launched upon the spiritual awakening, and I'm just going to be reading now the lines, the headings of the chapters. Experiencing the numbness of my life, seeking that elusive inner peace, the long road to egoic reconstruction and spiritual development, the dark night of the soul. The dark night of the soul is a notorious subject, written by St. John of the Cross in about 1500, speaking about a deep, profound depression and feeling of emptiness and lack of inner standing, until we can regroup with our very essence and rebuild ourselves, have a greater relationship with our spirits and the nature of God and the self, and it's very, very deep and profound, and that's why there are all these subheadings to that particular subject. So any of you that are struggling in life and wondering why this and why that, the Dark Night of the Soul is a very religiously steeped manuscript document. If you read it in its original form, but I've given it in its original form, but I've also then laboured as to explain it, which I've done with many other things in here. So life's meaning, is there one? The universe doesn't need a purpose, so why should we? The path to spiritual awakening begins. My Dark Night of the Soul. The power of letting go. How I fell down the rabbit hole. Plato's allegory of the cave. Plato's allegory of the cave is exceedingly important for anybody that wants to know what on earth is going on when we fall down the rabbit hole. When we enter into the Dark Night of the Soul, Plato's allegory of the cave will be a guiding light to take you out of the deepest and darkest of arenas which we enter into in our psyche. Are we really all one? Is the dream world a real place? The law of attraction is put to the test. The incredible powers of the mind. Meditation and the metaphysical bliss of his still mind. The day Jehovah kicked my ass. How can we know God if God is within us? The time Jesus showed me what unconditional love felt like. What's love got to do with it? So what is love? Varieties of religious experience when love doesn't live up to our expectations. Many varying alternate states of consciousness. How a shifted perspective changes our worldview. Entities within consciousness. Sojourns into the astral planes, and then I speak about my 12 prominent astral projections meeting astral entities and what that meant. How psychedelics, aka entheogens, changed my worldview. And then of course there's all these different sorts of stories of how I encountered very powerful experiences. How our unconscious will guides us towards the purity of God. How to know God. Now, when I'm speaking about God, I'm not speaking about Jehovah, Yahweh, or Allah. I'm speaking about the Spinoza God, the philosopher Spinoza. His idea of a God was an all-encompassing God, which not necessarily created the cosmos, but is the cosmos. The God that is everything, that is us, that is everything that we possibly can perceive. And so when we have a relationship with that God, then you can imagine that there's no conflict going on, because we don't have to bow and beg and pray and be afraid of and all this nonsense that is so threatening, coming from the Quran and the Old Testament. Faith, very powerful, very powerful. It's not again just about faith of the Old Testament and even the New Testament, because they vary greatly, but it's about faith as far as human beings are concerned. This whole thing is premised in faith, because if we don't believe in it, it doesn't exist. And I speak about as to why that is so in other chapters. René Descartes, Meditations on the First Philosophy. René Descartes, I'm always mentioning Descartes because he was one of the greatest philosophers that actually sat down to see if he could discover anything that's real in his world, and he discovered that the only thing that was real was the fact that he thought. There was thoughts, so that's the only thing he could finalise that he could have an adherence to, and so he coined those thoughts. God must obviously be God, and so the only thing that exists is God. Being born again with DMT. DMT had massive, profound effects on my psyche. Heaven is a state of mind, the psychology of experiencing God. Religious scriptures are the world's first attempt at cognitive behavioural therapy. The kingdom of God is within you all. Heaven and hell, right thinking and wrong thinking. How faith works its magic. To judge or not to judge, that is the question. being judgmental, of course, that's a major powerful thing in Jesus's writings, and you know what he had to offer people. And so I explain that. I explain specific personal experiences in relating to these things, so we can all reflect upon ourselves instead of just reading something from a book and taking it as, oh, okay, some sort of an analogy or whatever, some illustration. We look within ourselves to see if we can find the root of all these things, and that's what that book is going to do. It's going to be asking you to look for your root. The Akashic Records. Letting go of things that we know do not serve us anymore. Attracting gremlin energy forms via our production of dark energy. When we are producing dark energy, we will attract dark forces. And so there's much to be said on those dark forces. Is the world or universe, cosmos, perfect? The miracle of waking up. I have experienced times when the universe has appeared to be absolutely perfect. In a certain state of mind, in the mind of pure God consciousness, you know that the cosmos is perfect. But when we come back into the egoic state of mind, then we've got all these judgments. And so that is why the judging issue which Jesus spoke about is really important. Because when we do not judge, then we enter into the kingdom of God. When the carnal essence metaphorically dies and only the spirit remains. So when our physical thing metaphorically dies, when the ego dies, the only thing that is there, people, is cosmic consciousness, Holy Spirit. From caterpillar to butterfly, the spiritual metamorphosis. Embracing the emptiness, the process of letting go of ourselves, the fine art of narrowing down our point of focus so we can concentrate on the spiritual facet of existence. Self-love. What is it that we seek? Freedom from our empty minds. Freedom through our empty minds. What significance are the phantoms of my past now? What significance are memories? What do they really mean? How real and true are they? And of course, as we get older and older, they must become less real and less true. So how important are they really to keep clinging on to those things? There are very few accurate recordings of memories, so what do we have to lose? Energy vampires and attachments. So we can get energy vampires attached to us, and many people have got those. And if you read this book, then you'll discover some of your own. Vampiric energy forms that drain our life force. Energy vampires, true or false? You ask yourself that question. How to kill, erase, eradicate negative thought forms. The psychology of mind, the power of understanding how our minds work. Clearing the ground upon which to build our mansion. Clearing all the shit, peeling away all the layers of the onion to get back to your true essence before you can then, like the phoenix, rise again. Build your own mansion of consciousness. The very narrow path, of course, the very narrow path is the eightfold path of Buddhism. The fall of man in the Garden of Eden. The creation of Homo sapiens. So the whole fall of man in the Garden of Eden, that's my perspective, people, and it's a pretty unique one as far as I can gather. And so don't be under any illusion or delusion or misconception when I'm speaking about these things that you know what I'm going to be saying, because I'm going to come at these things from, you know, a very different angle from what most people are, because all most people have done is just fashioned what is read without really knowing an experience. Now here, the Taoism of Lao Tzu. That's to say the Tao Te Ching. Very powerful. Most primates are closer to God than human beings. Ooh, controversial, huh? Well, read the book and you'll find out why I say that. The inexpressible mind of God. The God particle. The God particle. The God particle. Well, I mean, the God particle is the Higgs boson, which was discovered at the Large Hadron Collider. And so there is a whole article on what that is and what it means to us. Jewish Kabbalah, union with God. Jewish Kabbalah, very powerful, very important. The portal into the mind of God, heaven, nirvana, bliss. The Book of Thomas, Jesus' sayings not included in the Bible, exceedingly important. For those of you that don't have an adherence to Christianity, then the Book of Thomas will be very insightful to you, because it liberates us from all of the bullshit pertaining to the Old and New Testament. All Christians, they wouldn't go near the Book of Thomas, because it would pull the carpet from out underneath their feet. They'll fall down, probably never to be able to get to their knees again. Christians are the biggest indoctrinated fools that you could ever meet, other than Muslims. Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas, know thyself. Egregores and morphic resonance fields. Morphic resonance is the subject that Rupert Sheldrake, Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, has coined and created, invented, written about. It's amazingly important, and if you understand morphic resonance, then you'll understand a great portion of what it is to be on this world. The theosophical viewpoint. Theosophy is coming from this woman who was a medium and had relations with spirits and all different sorts of people all over the world in relation to the spiritual phenomenological world. The Rosicrucian perspective. Hitler's hypnotic effect on the world. Adolf Hitler, you've got to say something about these people, because these people changed the world. Egregores, the paradoxical cosmos, Carl Jung's collective unconscious, Carl Jung's archetypes, many things in relation to Carl Jung, one of the greatest and most eminent psychologists ever on the planet. How the collective unconscious and archetypes play critical subliminal roles in our lives. Archetypes, egregores, they are manifestations of our consciousness. And they are something which, if we don't have a knowledge of, then we will be blind to the world. The shadow, the self, psychological types, theory of the libido, Freud versus Jung, the unconscious mind, human motivation, psychosexual stages, dream analysis, religion and spirituality. It just goes on and on and on. Is the cosmos a simulation? Well, read the book and make your own mind up. Okay, so we could have a look at a few of these down here as we're at the end now. So we've got things in here. Darwin's theory of evolution. Are we in a simulation? Was the cosmos created by a Big Bang? Criticism of the Big Bang, my thoughts on the Big Bang. Then the Mandela effect, the psychology behind the Mandela effect, parallel universes and glitches in the matrix, the devil is in the details. Conclusion. Okay, I won't spoil what the conclusion is, but you can see that there are let me see, we've got the Upanishads, we've got etymology of early formulations of Brahman, we've got the Vedas, the illusion of having our own minds. We are souls being written upon by the pervasive cosmic intelligence. So you can see that it truly is a considerable spiritual manuscript. It broaches old and new. It is filled with my personal experience of many of these subjects broached in this incredible spiritual Bible. Because when we're on the spiritual path, people, there is an enormous amount of things that we need to know. We need to collect eclectically from all the brilliant brains that the world has ever produced, and we have to look at the spiritual realm, we have to look at the scientific realm, we have to ask the questions like, I'm all speaking about, well, for thousands of years the spiritual people have been saying that this is all Maya and there is in actual fact no matter here. And so even the Greek great philosophers were speaking about there's no matter here. Plato himself spoke that everything basically is in idealism. It's within the mind, and we create the world via our thoughts and our forms, our ideas, and the forms the ideas take, and then we project them back onto the world. And so the quantum physicists with the double slit experiment, which tell us that there's nothing in actual fact in existence until consciousness imagines it into being. And then we've got all different sorts of varying, incredibly bewildering facets of quantum mechanics, which cannot feasibly be reasonably explained. They are enigmas. They are paradoxical in their very nature. It is almost like the universe will never ever allow us to be privy to what it is and how it creates and how it does what it does. Every time our physicists are looking for more, we find more, and it's always ever bewildering. And that's even to say that the greatest of the physicists on the planet only know what 4% of the cosmos is. And they don't even know what that 4% is, by the way. They think they know, they imagine they know, they hypothesize and theorize that they know. But in actual fact, I think it would be fair to say that as time goes by, they'll realize more and more that they do not in actual fact know what is there, until of course they realise that they are being dreamt in the mind of God, and then things will have a greater clarity. So, ladies and gentlemen, this book, the link will be in the description down below. You can find the link to Amazon in almost every single one of my latest videos. And so for those of you that are given to reading, you don't have to look at this book as a task that you could never complete, because there are 26 chapters, and the chapters are on a specific theme, and so you could work your way through one chapter. Maybe it's 15 pages, maybe it's 40 pages, but the chapters in themselves are not that huge. And then, of course, there are sub-chapters which you can take in their individuality. You can just skip through it and you can go, well, what does this mean? The divine peace of God vacates our minds and hearts when we invite in destructive negative energy forms. Wow, that sounds interesting. I'll read that before I go to bed, and then I'll meditate on that over the next few days. The divine peace of God vacates our minds and hearts when we invite in destructive, negative energy forms. How does that work? Find out. That's just one of a whole myriad. How our conscious will guides us towards the purity of God. Do you want to know these things, people? Do you want to know these things? When a Black Panther turned into an Egyptian queen in one of my astral excursions. One more. The Jungian collective unconscious. To know about Jung's collective unconscious is massively educational. And so, because this video I'll probably make this my main video of the channel now. I'll say this one more time. There are excerpts from many of the world's geniuses within this book, and I write about my experience pertaining to what they said. And so I'm not just telling you what they said, I'm interpreting what they said in my own personal way, which is what we all must do. We must never just take any information which we get on face value and go no further. We have to assimilate it. We have to assimilate the knowledge into our personal subjective experience. If we can't do that, we will never know it. It's just going to be words stored in our archives. We have to know this stuff. How do we know it? Well, We launch ourselves on the dark night of the soul. We launch ourselves on the hero's journey, and a whole myriad of other journeys: the psychedelic journey, the meditating journey, the out-of-body journey, the journey of knowledge within the philosophy and psychology and science, and on and on and on. There's just a million things to know, people. And so, if you want to know some of those things, then, you know, invest in that book. Now, what I will say is that that book isn't going to be making me rich. I'm already rich. It will make you rich when you acquire the knowledge and the wisdom, and you put some of that knowledge and my projected wisdom into practice, and so one day it will become your wisdom too. And so that's the thing I'll leave you with. I won't be becoming rich from the sales of this book. I made up my mind when I was 20 years old that I would much rather be rich in mind and body than in pocket. So when I said that on my 20th birthday, with a few of my best friends, where we're going to be when we're 50, you know, what does our life, you know, have in store for us? Well, I said that, you know, money to me isn't going to be an important factor of my life, and so I will endeavour to be rich in mind and body rather than pocket. And that is exactly where I am now, albeit I was relatively rich at one stage in my life, in pocket, but absolutely barren in my heart and in relation to any spiritual connection. So go figure. I engaged in the trinkets of the devil, which was money and power, at a deficit of having spirit and freedom. You see, people? So the truth will set you free. Anyway, I've said enough. Enjoy the book.